All right, sorry for the delay everybody. For some reason, right before I went on, everything just stopped working. I don't know why, but it did. But we're back up and running. So again, sorry for the delay, but we'll go ahead and get started here. If you got a question, go ahead and post it. It's either going to be, if you're on a mobile device, it's going to be below the video. If you are on a desktop, laptop, computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video, or at least it should be. Either way, you should find a place on the video where you can post your question. So first I want to talk about, I got a member question asking, how do you start the downswing? And they've gotten all these kinds of information. All these instructors say these different things. And I think there's a lot of confusion about this because really the downswing technically starts when the club switches directions at the top. So here I am at the top of the swing. The downswing starts when the club gets to here and then switches back. So that's when the downswing's technically starting. So how do you start that is really kind of the big debate, or what's really confusing. And really what it comes down to is you need to be doing things in your backswing that allow you to start that downswing in the proper sequence. That's why it's confusing. It's not the backswing and the downswing are separate. It's really, they're kind of melted together. And really you're doing things in the last part of your backswing to help you to be able to improve that downswing. So a lot of it has to do with the pressure and the momentum shift that you're having. So the first thing we want to do is understand exactly and not confuse what pressure and momentum are, or momentum. When I say momentum, I'm talking about your weight shift, because I think a lot of people get confused about that as well. So pressure, when we're talking about pressure, I'm talking about the force that I'm putting into the ground. Ground force reaction basically is what that is. That's the pressure that you're putting into the ground. And that's what most people equate your weight shift to, because that's what you feel in your feet. That's what you're feeling. And it makes total sense to think of it that way. I used to think of it that way as well until I learned about all this stuff. Your momentum shift, I'm basically talking about your center of mass and how that is moving, and the momentum of that, basically. So when you think about this, the easiest way that I can kind of explain it is when you're walking, right, you are putting pressure into the ground back behind you, right, away from you with your trail foot, but your momentum is moving in the opposite direction. This same thing is happening in the last part of the backswing. What I see a lot of amateurs doing, and why a lot of amateurs struggle with this, is that they get up to the top of the swing, they're loaded up, and they still have their momentum kind of going this way at the top of the swing. And then they don't have any pressure putting in any momentum going toward the target to get any pressure in that lead foot to be able to push into the ground and be able to rotate in the downswing and have that proper sequence. So what ends up happening here is they get up to the top, their momentum, all their pressure is here in the ground and all their momentum's going this way. And then they start the downswing, right? Because that's when the club switches directions. But it's really just all the arms, and they're getting no rotation. The hands just get out, the arms get out in front of the body. A lot of you probably look like this at impact, right? So no rotation, early extension into impact. And that has a lot to do with starting the downswing sequence incorrectly. There's a lot of other things that can be going on there that can be causing that, but a lot of it has to do with how you're starting the downswing. So what we need to be doing is very initially in our backswing, that's when we're getting our momentum going this way, and we're feeling that pressure in the trail foot. And we're feeling that to start to go up very, very quickly. So that's right away in the backswing. That's when I'm getting momentum going this way, and that's when I'm getting that pressure built up in the backswing. As I reach to somewhere in this point, right, somewhere in that halfway up position, I'm going to start getting momentum going that way. So now that I've got my momentum going that way, I'm going to be pushing this way to get my momentum moving toward the target as I'm still reaching the top and as I'm still building pressure in my trail foot. Your average tour player is going to have 75–80% of the pressure in this trail foot at the top of the swing. But then before I start the downswing, I'm starting to get some of that pressure before the club switches directions. I'm starting to get some of that pressure into that lead foot. Or sometimes it happens right as you're starting the downswing. There's some players that start the downswing and then get that pressure into the ground somewhere in this area when they're starting getting some substantial pressure. But they're getting that pressure into the ground in the lead foot early enough that's going to allow them, as they get into the ground here, to rotate their body, to be able to use the lower body correctly. Whereas a lot of what I see with a lot of amateurs is that they don't get any substantial pressure into the ground until their hands are basically right in this area, and they're usually kind of like this with the club. And by then, it's too late. We get with that basically that false weight shift where the arms kind of race out in front of the body, and really it's just the momentum of your upper body, the club, the hands, your arms, the shoulders, that really bring you all the way around. So what we need to have happen is we need to get initially loading up in that trail foot to about right here. And then we want to get, as we're going up to the top, we want to get that pressure, feeling like we're pushing off of that pressure and getting that momentum shift to the lead side, and then getting pressure in that lead foot early so that way we can use the ground properly. Now, it is subtle with a lot of tour players, which you're going to see if you look at video. You will see some tour players get some lateral movement as they get up to the top of the swing. You're going to see some, and you're going to see some that get none. You're going to see some that really don't get any lateral movement at all. They just rotate their hips back, they stay in it, and they rotate their hips that way. That's because they don't really get the momentum shift turns into rotation right away, essentially. So they're getting up to the top of the swing, and as soon as they get pressure into the ground, as soon as they kind of get down and get that pressure, they're pushing the hip back out of the way. And like I said, some players you'll see, they'll get a momentum shift where they will have some lateral movement and then rotate out of the way. So a player that has some lateral movement would be like an Adam Scott, Brooks Koepka. A player that doesn't really have any lateral movement, you won't really see much in their swing, would be someone like a Bubba Watson, doesn't have a lot of lateral movement in his swing. Dustin Johnson doesn't have a lot of lateral movement in the swing. Typically, the people that you see that rotate a lot, have a lot of rotation when they come into contact. They don't have a lot of lateral movement in their swing, but they're starting essentially that backswing, the downswing, the sequence of it to get you to sequence properly is happening in the last part of the backswing. So there's a great drill that you can work on this. I like to call this kind of a modified step drill. We have a sumo step drill in our 20-minute distance fixed course that's included in your membership. It's more geared toward distance, but it's also geared toward getting this downswing sequence properly done. So if you're looking for the speed part of this drill, then I would highly recommend going to our 20-minute distance fixed course. We see a lot of people that come to our distance clinics. We do this exact same drill, and they get a lot of speed gains from it, and they also sequence their swing a lot better when they do this. So this is a drill that's included in your membership. Go to the 20-minute distance fixed course, click the house icon, and then go to the 20-minute distance fixed course. Go to the week 1 drills. It's actually the second week in there. And while you're there, you may as well work through all of the drills there. But that step drill, what you're doing in there is you're starting with your feet together, and you're starting that backswing, and you're stepping at the same time. So it's an exaggeration. I talked about how we want that momentum shift going to our lead side in the last half of the backswing, but it's an exaggeration. You always want to exaggerate things initially. If you're someone who is not getting that momentum shift until the arms are down here in the downswing, then you need to feel like it's happening right away, right? And that drill is going to be really good for that. So the sumo step drill is going to be really good. And then this is the one that I like, this variation that I like. Where you take your normal stance, and you're not going to be hitting a ball when you're doing this. You can, but I would start out not hitting a golf ball just to get comfortable with this movement. And what you're going to do is you're going to start this backswing. You're going to go about halfway up. So you go about halfway up. All right, club's about parallel to the ground, hands about belt high. And what you're going to do, and you're loading up to this point. So as you're bringing this back, you're really loading, your momentum's going away from the target, and you're really loading up in that trail foot. And then as you continue to go up, you're going to lift your foot and then put it back on the ground before you start down with the hands and arms. So that's really what's going to trigger the hands and arms coming down. So you're going to lift it up almost like if you're a baseball player, right? And you're going to step forward like that. It's the same kind of thing. I'm getting up here, and then I'm lifting up and putting it back on the ground before my arms start down. I'm going to feel like the pressure that I'm putting into the ground here is really almost like I have a gear system inside of me. And that's what all those gears are turning, and that's what's starting to get my arms coming down and then working all the way through. So that's a great drill to work on that. Feel like that foot's coming down the ground and it's pulling everything through and come all the way around. Once you get comfortable with that, then I would try to add it, do it with the golf ball. Take the pause out of there eventually, right? Take the pause out of it and try to do it to in one nice fluid motion. So that would look something like this, where you're going up and putting it back down. I'm not going to do the whole thing in here because I don't want to break anything in my room here, but that's what I would recommend doing. Then once you start getting comfortable with that, now try to get that same kind of feeling in your swing. So I would almost feel like initially you're really, you're set up pretty balanced here. You can set up with a little bit more here, a little bit more there. It's not that big a deal. Really what we want to do is in the beginning of the backswing, unweight this foot right here in the very beginning. So you're unweighting this foot. You're putting a ton of pressure initially into here, and then halfway up, you're starting to push off of this foot to get that momentum going here. And then once you get down into the ground here and you feel that pressure, you're pushing into the ground to rotate that hip out of the way. Try to feel like your hip socket is not going past your ankle. It's staying inside the ankle, and that's going to help you to push that hip back and out of the way as you're allowing this club to whip through there. So that's going to help you to get that downswing sequence worked out a little bit better. All right, so let's get to the next question here. All right, so Fred K says, hi Q, I've been working on fixing my slice by first closing the face. The slice now doesn't happen as much, but I now have a major pull, not a draw. Is this an aim more to the right issue or open the club face? I find it is difficult to answer without video, but just interested in some swing thoughts. Thanks. So basically, you did the first part of what you need to do to fix your slice, and that is to get the club face more closed. So basically what causes a slice, the main thing that causes a slice is a club path. Basically, the main thing that causes a slice is the face being open to the path, right? So now, and what I mean by that is the direction the club face is pointing at impact being open to the direction the club head is moving at impact. So what you've done is you're swinging over the top most likely, and now you've lined up your face with your path. So your face and your path are in the same direction. Now you just need to take that path and get it straightened out. So right now you're swinging like this. Your face and your path are both pointed to the left, assuming you're right-handed. What you need to do is you need to try to get a push. Try to feel like you're hitting a block out to the right. Try to feel like your face and your path are both pointed out to the right. Swing out to the right. So the feelings that you want to do with that would be feeling like you're very angled away as you're coming into contact. So really, really angled away with your body. That's going to allow you, because if you're vertical, if you're like this, right, you're going to tend to want to go out. So you want to be more angled away so that club can more easily work from the inside and get that working out to the right. So that's the feel of what's going to happen. More than likely, what you're going to do is you're going to swing more on plane. Now, something you can do, I can kind of show you here, something you can set up, like a swing station you can set up. So if this is my ball, right, so if I'm going to be hitting at this ball and I'm wanting to swing out to the right, what I would do is I would take my ball and then I would set up a little swing station. So these are just a couple of lacrosse balls. I wouldn't necessarily use these, but it's just an obstacle to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So what I do is I take a head cover is usually, something that you're going to have on hand that's going to be soft and not going to damage your club if you hit it. But you can see here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a head cover or something like that, something light that won't damage my club, and I'm going to put it behind the ball and then a little bit outside the ball. And then I'm going to put another one ahead of the ball and a little bit inside of the ball. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a path for my club to work through. So if you're doing what you do now, excuse me, which is kind of swing over the top with an out to in path, well, I'm going to nail one of these or both of these if I do that. If I'm swinging like this, I'm going to hit that. So you're getting instant feedback whether you're swinging on plane or not, or from the inside. Whereas if I swing like this from the inside, I'm going to miss those completely, and I'm going to get my path working out to the right. So I would set up a station like this and really exaggerate trying to get that to work out to the right. Then once you get it to where you're actually hitting blocks out to the right, at that point, I would ease off of this a little bit. I would give yourself a little bit more space, move these a little bit off. That will allow you to just to ease off of that a little bit. And then once you get to where it's just a little bit of a push, now let's get these out of the way. And I'm going to try to replicate that same kind of feeling. I may still need to adjust it or ease off of it, but that's what I would do to get that to be working more on plane. So Bob goes on to say, does early extension potentially cause the block right with the driver? Yes, it can. So basically, it goes on to say something else. Sorry. Should have also mentioned I am not over the top casting the club. All right, cool. So yes, early extension can cause a block out to the right, because what happens is typically the reason why you early extend is because the club is steep. So if I have the club like this, which would be steep, where the club's more vertical to the ground, and if I go like this and I early extend, what is that club doing, right? Because my hands are going to work out that way because I early extend, and the club head's going to want to line up with the force that I'm applying with my hands. The club's going to go like that, right? And the other thing that it does is it kind of opens. See how my face is open when I do that? So path into out, face open, that can definitely lead to a block out to the right. Typically, those who who have some serious early extension, a lot of times will have blocks out to the right or snap hooks, because that path works too much to the inside. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll either leave that face open and we'll hit a block, or we'll roll the face over to compensate, to try to square it up suddenly at the end, and our path will be too much into out with our face close to the path, and we get those hooks. So yes, that's typically what happens. If you are in that kind of situation, what I'd recommend doing is working on the move course. The move is going to help you to get this club more shallowed out so that you don't have to go like this, right? It's going to get it shallowed out so that way you can stay in your posture and rotate. If I have this club shallowed out and on plane or slightly to the inside, I don't have to make a compensation in the downswing to get it back on plane. I can just rotate into the golf ball. What the move also does is it gets you to square the face earlier in the swing. So that way, again, you're just rotating and releasing that. You're able to release this club out in front. Releasing the club early is a means to squaring up the face or closing the face, right? So if I come into contact and I'm like this, that's really closing the face. If I come into contact and I'm like this, with those same, if I have those same wrist angles, you can see I'm releasing this club out in front, but I'm leaving that face open. So what we want to do is get that face more square, more closed here, so that way when we come into contact, we'll have a square club face when we're releasing it out front. And that's all in the move course. So go to the move, work through the move course, work through all the drills there, and that will get you to where that usually fixes early extension. You know, if you're shallowing out the club already, you know, early extension can be caused kind of by the hip movements a little bit, but a lot of times it's because of the structure that you've created at the top of the swing, which would be something like this: open face and steep. If I'm open face and steep, then I have to flip and stand up to get to the golf ball. If I have an open face and I have to early release to square up the face, well, I have to stand up to make room for the club. So that might be why you have early extension, right? But yeah, so I would recommend working on the move course to improve that. To get to the move, click the house icon. That'll take you to the home page. On the home page, you can scroll down. You'll see a list of all the courses that we offer. Click on the move and get started on those drills whenever you get a chance. All right. So Chuck B says, should I change my grip when switching from a draw to a fade and vice versa? I prefer to grip that has the crease between the thumb and forefinger toward the right shoulder. Over time, I have noticed that my grip weakened, which I think weakened my ball contact. So it's really personal preference. There's lots of ways to hit a draw and a fade. But here's what has to happen. When you hit a draw, the face has to be close to the path. When you hit a fade, the face has to be open to the path. How you do that is really personal preference, but I can go over how I do it. So yes, I effectively weaken and strengthen my grip depending on the shot that I'm trying to hit. So if I'm just trying to hit a straight shot, very little curvature on a shot, what I would be doing is I take a fairly neutral grip, which again, this is just my personal preference. This is what I do. It doesn't mean that you should use a neutral grip. It doesn't mean that. You may hit the ball straight with a strong grip and straight with a weak grip. You know, it's really personal preference. There's a lot that goes into it. So I use a pretty neutral grip. So a weak grip would be where the thumb's directly on top. A strong grip, strong grip would be where the thumb, this would be very strong, where the thumb's more on the side of the grip, right? And a neutral grip would be somewhere in between there, right? So right in between. And you could have a strong neutral grip. You could have a weak to neutral grip. You know, there's lots of variance in there, but basically I'm about 25%, you know, if I'm about halfway toward a strong grip, which would be right in the neutral grip. That's what I would do for a dead straight shot. So I'd have my stance pretty square to my target line, and I would have my face fairly square at address, and I would have a fairly neutral grip there. Now, if I'm trying to hit a draw, what I'll do is I will aim my feet at the direction where I want the ball to start. So my toe line will be in the direction of where I want the ball to start. And then I will strengthen my grip in order to get the club face to be closed to my feet, to my toe line, essentially. So I'll strengthen my grip a little bit to get that. Basically, I'll strengthen my grip enough essentially to get the face pretty close to pointed at the target. I'm going extreme here so you can kind of see what I'm saying. So if I were to really set up like this, let's say that the target was straight into this wall here, you know, this would be a pretty big time snap hook here. I'm pretty darn closed off, and I got a really, really strong grip here, and that's going to allow me to get this club to work into out with a closed face. So here again, just to go over that again, I'll set up my feet toward the direction I want it to start. I'll basically strengthen my grip to get the face closed and pointed more near the target. I'll put the ball about a ball back in my stance. Typically a little ahead of the forward, or a little bit ahead of the middle of my stance where I'm playing most of my shots off the turf. I'll put it about in the middle of my stance for this shot. And that just helps me to get the path working a little bit more easily from the inside. And then what I do is I will just try to swing along my feet. I'll swing along my toe line is what I'm doing. The reason why I like to set it up that way is because to me it's easier because I'm not changing my path or anything. I'm using the same swing path. I'm using the same swing. I'm just hitting a draw with the way that I'm setting up. My setup is closing the face and it is closing my face to my path. All right. And then the same thing for a fade. If I'm wanting to hit a fade, I will set up my feet in the direction I want the ball to start. I will get the club face pointed toward the target, which effectively weakens my grip. So if I open the face to get it more pointed toward the target, that effectively weakens my grip. I will play the ball. I'll play the ball about in the same place, maybe slightly more forward, but typically I'll play it a little bit more. I don't really like to play the ball too far forward because that eventually will add a little bit too much loft. So with the fade, I like to play the ball still in about in the same ball position, and I'll actually feel like I'm pushing my hands more forward as I'm coming through contact, which will help me to get the face more open. Remember what we talked about? A later release opens the face, right? Unless you have a compensation, which is turning down the handle. So effectively, what I'll try to do is I'll try to actually push my hands more forward, which opens the face more, but also leans the shaft more forward, which doesn't make me add too much loft. So that's essentially what I'll do there. And then I will swing again. I will swing along my foot line, right, and try to have my face open to my path as I come through. Now that's just the way that I do it. I think that's the easiest way. Some people will take the same grip, neutral grip with all of them, and they will manipulate the face in their path in their swing. They'll line up. Some people will line up the way that I do. Line up their feet in the direction they want to start, and also have the face in that direction. And then they'll manipulate the face. They'll hold the face open, or they'll roll the face over more as they're coming through contact to get it to close. I don't think that's the easiest way. Because to me, it's a little bit easier to do it, but it's to each their own. Not everyone's going to do it the same way. But that's what has to happen at impact. What has to happen at impact to get the draw on the fade is the face has to be close to the path for a draw and open to the path for a fade. So as long as you're making that happen and it's something that you can do, it's something that you prefer, then that's completely fine. Who am I to tell you that that's wrong? But just letting you know the way that I do it. So Janice K says, if I do just a half backswing, I'm still shallowing the club. Is there time to do that? Yeah, so typically, that's a good question. So basically, when you're doing kind of a half swing, so let's say it's only this much, you're not really, it's more of a pivot of your body and you're not lifting the club as much. So if I'm only taking a half swing, it's only like that, I'm not really lifting the club that much. It's more of a pivot. So that club is already essentially in a shallow position. I don't need to shallow it even more. So if I'm right here, I don't need to shallow it even more, because if you look, if I do that, then that club's way inside. I'm going to have to flip to get it back out front, or I'm going to hit a block a mile out to the right. So essentially, that club's already, what shallowing is, and this is what I think is a little bit confusing about shallowing, and I did an office hours highlight about this a couple weeks ago or last week. I can't remember exactly when it was, but essentially what shallowing is, it's getting the club on plane. That's what it is. From the top of the swing, getting the club on plane. So when we swing up to the top, we're lifting and we're rotating up to the top. That club is above the plane, right? My plane is actually somewhere in this area. So what I have to do to get it back on plane is I have to shallow it to get it back on plane, right? So I have to go from here, then I have to shallow it to get it back on plane. That's really what it is it's just getting the club on plane. If I swing really, really flat, right, and I swing basically where my plane is, well, then I don't really have to do anything to shallow it. Now, what I see what a lot of people do from this position, because it gets the club, a lot of times it gets this arm too bent, and then you just want to kind of throw the club out, and you're going to end up coming over the top. It usually doesn't work. I see a lot of people all the time. They try to swing on one plane, but the problem is that when they do that, they get back here, and they're trying to get the club back there as much as they can. They're really bending their arms because this is the only way, because there's just stuff in the way, right? Our chest and our arms are bumping into each other. We can't get the club back there enough to really get a lot of speed. So what ends up happening is that we just kind of end up coming over the top, and it's counterproductive, right? So if we get the club up more, then we have space to get that club to work down back on plane. And it also is a much easier way to get speed, because you're adding more length to your swing. Things aren't bumping into each other as much, right? So my shoulder isn't bumping into my chest, or sorry, my chest isn't bumping into my bicep here. If you're somewhat bulky, right? You have a wide chest and bigger arms. Those really young guys, young skinny kids, they can swing flat all day and probably not have any issues. But as you get older, you get more muscular. Sometimes there's not muscle, right? Sometimes it's other stuff that's getting in the way too. and you're not able to get the club very deep from that kind of position. So it's usually easier to get the club more up here and then shallow it out. So that's what I would recommend doing. But I think we got a little bit off on a tangent here. I forgot what the actual question was. Oh yeah, so the half backswing. So like I said, when you're bringing the club back here, the club's already shallow most likely, so you don't need to shallow it. Now, if you bring the club up like this in your half backswing, you're going to need to get that on plane. Otherwise, if you don't shallow it, you're just going to cut across it. So it really just depends on where you bring it back to. And typically in a half backswing, you don't need to elevate the club because you're not trying to get speed or anything. You're just trying to get the club back enough to get enough speed to get to where you want to go if you're doing kind of a gauge swing. So if you're taking kind of a half backswing, the club's already shallowed out. You typically don't need to, but if you're going like this, then you're going to need to reroute it to get it inside, which would require you to shallow out the club. So John Z says, "Hi Q, can you give me some of the reasons why I have a problem keeping a bent right arm at impact?" Really, it really just depends. I mean, I would really need to see your swing to know exactly why. But here's a couple of reasons. One would be poor structure at the top. So if you're in a position where you're throwing the club from the very beginning, we often see is people get their right arm very, very bent, and at the top of the swing, they're kind of like this, right? So that would look something like that. So very, very bent arm. Well, from this position, you really have no choice but to throw the club to be in the very beginning. And if you're already throwing the club right here, and if your arm is kind of stuck behind you, well, you have to get that club back in front of you. Otherwise, the only other option is to rotate like crazy to get there. And nobody's going to do that. Almost nobody's going to do that. Jim Furyk kind of does that, but it's very, very difficult. You have to be like an incredible athlete to be able to do that. So that would be a big reason. Another reason would be just if you're not doing that, maybe you just feel like you need to throw it from the top to get speed. That would be a good reason. Another reason would be you're coming down steep, right? So if you're coming down steep like this, you have to stand up to get that club back on plane. If you stand up, you have to throw the club at the golf ball, right, to get to it. So that might be a reason why. Another reason why it might be because we talked about this earlier, because you release the club early as a means to square up the face. So when you release the club early, that's straightening the trail arm, right? So there's lots of things that can be going on, but it's hard to say without seeing your swing exactly to know. But the move would be your best chance. That would cover several of the things, several of the reasons why. That would be your best chance to look at. Or, I'd recommend checking out our unlimited swing reviews. I don't have any spots available right now, but if you go to the unlimited swing review, click get a review in the upper right-hand corner and join the waiting list. I plan on hopefully opening up some spots later this month. So join the waiting list. The last 3 or 4 months or so, I've only sent an email to the waiting list whenever I've opened up spots. So if you don't join the waiting list, you may never get notified when spots become available. So, how that works exactly, just so there's no confusion, is when you join the waiting list, basically what happens is that you're going to get an email whenever I open up spots. And then it's first come, first serve. So everyone on the waiting list is getting emailed at the same time, and it's first come, first serve from there. The last couple times I opened up spots, I sold out in about 45 minutes. And typically I'm only able to open up about 5 spots at a time. So keep that in mind. But if you want to join the waiting list, go ahead and click that get a review, scroll down to the bottom of the page. If there's a spot available, go ahead and grab it if you're wanting to get started. But if not, join that waiting list. So that way, whenever I open up spots here this month sometime, you'll get an email letting you know, hey, spots are available. And if you get that email, I rush over there right away. All right, so Bob M says, in terms of compressing the ball, can you review how that happens? It's not trying to hit down on the hands. How do you get this just to happen? So that's a good question. So let's talk about exactly what compressing the ball really is, because I think a lot of people are confused about that, because and what you said right there, I think, is a lot of what the confusion is. Compressing the ball is not hitting the ball down into the ground. That's not compressing the golf ball. Compressing the golf ball really just means transferring as much energy as possible to the golf ball from the club. That's what that is. So if you imagine, I've got this golf ball here that's got a nail through it. If I were to drive this nail into the golf ball as much as I possibly could, how would I hit it? That's basically what compression is. So that involves, one, hitting it in the center of the club face, right? So if I don't hit this nail, if I hit this nail out on the toe, that's going to twist open the face, which is not going to transfer as much energy to the golf ball. If I hit it in the center, this face will be stable and it will transfer more energy to the golf ball. So one, hitting the ball in the center of the face. Two is going to be hitting the ball with a square club face and a square path, right? So what that means is the direction the club face is pointing needs to be square, right in the direction of the target, and then the direction the club head is moving also needs to be in the direction. So imagine if I was coming in, I was swinging to the left with an open face. Well, that would be a glancing blow. If you were to try to drive this nail in there, you wouldn't go like this, right? You would go straight down into that nail. If you had a hammer, right? If this was a hammer, you would go straight down into that. You wouldn't go like that because it wouldn't transfer a lot of energy into it. So that's a big part of it. You're slicing, hooking, you're putting really any curvature on the golf ball. That's less compression, right? So that would be the next piece. The second piece would be, or the next piece after that would be your spin loft. So we had our face to path. Now we have the spin loft. So the face to path is this way. All right. So that's the horizontal component. The vertical component is going to be spin loft. So your spin loft is basically your angle between the direction the club head is moving down and the loft that you're presenting to the golf ball. So you're going to be compressing the ball more with your lower lofted clubs because there's going to be less spin loft with those clubs because there is less loft on the face. Versus a wedge, the spin loft is going to be quite a bit higher, right? There's going to be a much bigger difference because there's a lot more loft on this club. So that's a big part of it. So you want to come in basically, if you want as much compression as possible, you want to have as little spin loft as possible. Now, obviously, we don't want to necessarily have so much spin loft that we can't get enough spin on the golf ball and we can't get the ball up in the air. But that's how you would compress it. It's basically just hitting it like a sledgehammer, right? That's how you would compress it. Now, those things, we have our centerness of contact. We have our face and our path in the same direction. We have our spin loft, getting that to be pretty low. And then we add to that speed. Now you have compression. Once you add to those things speed, you have the ability to compress the ball as much as possible. Compressing the ball is not hitting down on the golf ball, right? That's actually going to reduce your compression because you're going to be hitting down on it too much. You need to be hitting it toward the target with as little loft as possible to reduce the spin loft to get maximum compression. So your compression is going to, like I said, it's going to go down through the golf bag. If you looked at your smash factor, that is a direct, that's basically your compression right there. That's what compression is, your smash factor. So if you look at your smash factor for a driver, and just to give you to the definition of smash factor, your smash factor is the relationship of your ball speed to your club head speed. It's a measure of how much energy you are transferring to the golf ball. So with a driver, the best smash factor you can get about typically is going to be about 1.5, right? So typically when you see someone, if they're swinging 120 miles per hour, the maximum smash factor or the maximum ball speed they're going to get is typically going to be about 1.8 because that is 1.5, 120. And that means they're transferring a ton of energy into the golf ball. That's about the maximum. If you look at a wedge, you know, if you're hitting a wedge shot, it can be about 1.1 smash factor. So if you're swinging your wedge 100 miles per hour, which would be super high, but let's say you're swinging your wedge 100 miles per hour, your ball speed at most is typically going to be about 110, 115 miles per hour, somewhere in that area. So that's really what compression is just transferring as much energy as possible to the golf ball. It's not chopping down into the golf ball. That's not what you want to do. That's going to reduce compression. All right. So Michael J says, in one of Clay's videos, he indicates that your lower body should be at 45-degree angle at impact, but your shoulders are square to the target. How do you start the lower body first and keep your shoulders square? So that's going to be get the proper sequencing in the downswing. So making sure you're getting a good weight shift to your lead side, getting that pressure into the lead foot. I only have about 10 minutes left here, and I'm guessing I have quite a few questions. So yeah, I'm going to be kind of buzzing through these questions. So I do apologize, but there's a video. It's called How to Start the Downswing. Go to that video and work through the drill there. There's a step drill that can help you get that proper weight shift, or go back to the beginning. Once this video is archived, once this office hours is archived, go watch the archived office hours. The very beginning, the first thing that I talk about is how you would start that sequence properly. So BR014, use the search engine to find that video or watch the archive video later on. So Rick F says, good morning, Q. I am to practice swing the club and hit shots correctly with body rotation and stand in straight lead arm. However, when I go to the full swing, my body rotation stalls, my upper body dips downward and toward the ball. And of course, again, chicken wing, inconsistent ball contact compression. Your thoughts, next lesson with Rob in 10 days. So basically what's going on is that in your practice swing, you likely would not be squaring up the face. You're likely not hitting the ground where the golf ball is. You're not doing, basically when we hit the golf ball, we make compensations in our swing to be able to hit the golf ball where we want it to go, right? So I would almost guarantee you, if you look at your swing on video, you may see everything with your body looks great, but I almost guarantee you've got that club face wide open. I almost guarantee it, because when you releasing the club early is a means to squaring up the face. So if you release the club later, you're used to squaring it up like this, more than likely your hands are going to be wide open. So you need to get that handle turning down. Basically, you need to get to where your practice swing. If the golf ball was there, it would be a great shot. So you're coming down, you're hitting the ball, you're hitting the ground, right? You're not swinging above the ground. Because I see a lot of people, they take practice swings. They say their practice swing looks perfect, but they're swinging 6 inches, 3 inches above the ground. Well, you would miss the golf ball if the golf ball was there, right? They come in and the hosel of the club, you know, this is where the golf ball would be, but they come in and it's actually right there, right? When they hit, well, obviously I'd be hitting that off the hosel of the club. They're also coming in, like I said earlier, and the club face is wide open. So you need to get to where, when you're looking on video, you know, put a little crosshairs when you're looking on video and see where the golf ball would be and see if you would actually be hitting a good shot. See if that face is square. See if you're actually hitting it in the center of the face. You know, the camera needs to be still for this. And if you're getting those pieces, then you're on the right track. But more than likely, your contact would actually be terrible if you took that swing with the golf ball there, which is why you make compensations to not do that when the golf ball is there. All right, so Alan says, video indicates I'm lifting up in my backswing. My shoulders look flat. I'm not aware of this when I'm swinging. I can do a mirror work correctly, but during the swing, hitting a ball, lift up. Any suggestions? Just need to keep drilling it. Get out of your comfort zone, right? So there's a great drill called shoulder to shoulder drill. Do some drills where you're getting this angle down and keeping it angled down, and then take the club, do a practice swing, angle down, and keep doing that until it becomes more comfortable. I wish things just worked out and you could just do it for, sorry, I have like a bug on me or something. You can just do it, you know, for, you know, like a range session, like a half hour, and you would just nail it. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You got to keep drilling it and go through the stages of learning there. So James M says, Q, can you explain the release from the downswing from the light leg to the release? Do you hold the lag? Thanks. So you're not holding on to anything. Again, I think I have a bug on me or something. I don't know what's going on. All right. So you don't want to have the feeling that you're necessarily holding on to anything. Shouldn't say that. Feeling is relative. So it might be that you feel like you're holding on, but you're technically not. But when you're pushing off of the trail leg and then you're pushing into the lead leg to rotate that body open. So you need to be rotating the body open to get it to release out in front. If you are releasing the club early, it's usually because you're either coming down steep, right? You have the face open and you got to square it late, or you're just not using your lower body. You're not getting down and rotating the body. You need to get down and reflex the legs. So as we're going up the top, we're flexing those legs down. If you look at tour players, lead arm parallel to the ground in the downswing, hips are back to square, and they're in a squatted position like this. If you look like this, you're not going to be able to rotate, and you have to throw the arms. You don't have any flex in your legs. If my legs are dead straight, I can't really rotate. But if I have some flex in my legs, I can really rotate my body, right? So that's what you have to have in order to do that. So I look at those things in your swing to be able to do those. Hoa L says, can you explain, I can stroke for bunker on the practice mat. They look good. But when I stroke on the bunker, they're so bad. Please give me advice. So you can't really practice a bunker shots off of a mat. That's not really how it works, because you need to hit behind the golf ball when you're hitting out of a bunker, especially a greenside bunker. So just to go over real quickly, a bunker shot. So wide stance, all right? So wider stance. You need to open up the face about 45 degrees, right? You're going to play the ball somewhat forward in your stance. So somewhat forward in your stance. And then you need to swing hard and hit the ground about 45 or about 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball and slide the club underneath the golf ball. And that will make you want to feel like you're hitting the sand and the sand is throwing the ball out. That's what you want to feel like. And that's going to allow you to get the ball out of the bunker. So go practice that. You need to practice bunker shots out of the bunker. Practicing off of a mat, it's not going to do anything for you. So Bob M says, excellent intro today. Can you expand a little on keeping the backswing going up as you go, the lower body moving forward? Can you expand on keeping the backswing going up as the lower body is going forward? Yeah, so you're pushing off of your trail side. So I'm here, I'm pushing. I'm continuing to push, and it's just like walking. You do it every single day. I'm pushing and I'm going forward, right? I'm pushing off and I'm going forward. It's the same thing in our golf swing. I'm loading up initially, right? And then I'm pushing off and going forward as I'm reaching the top of the swing. And then as soon as I get some pressure in that lead foot, then I'm letting it go after that as I'm continuing to push with my lead leg. So Bob M goes on to say, I find that I can get the sequence right, but I tend to stop short, not fully loaded. Yeah, so you just need to make sure that you get a full shoulder turn, right? So I would just try to get your back going to the target, right? And then get that lead leg and start down. So I just kind of combine what we do in the power turn with that proper sequencing. So Richard S says, how do you get to the top from the end of the takeaway? You just continue going. There's no, I don't know why I get this question quite a bit. It's like, they say they understand how to get the takeaway. There's nothing, you just continue, you just keep going. You just keep going up to the top. So you just keep lifting and rotating. So in the start of the swing, and I think people don't get this because a lot of people do all arms in the takeaway, which I don't really recommend, is this right here. You need to get the hips going too, right? You don't see tour players go, like even someone who has a very outside takeaway, like a Matt Wolff, he is turning his hips out like that, right? He looks like this at this point in the swing. And then he goes like that. You need to get your hips turning. So we're turning our hips, we're turning our shoulders, right? And we're lifting the club. All right, we're lifting the club with the arms. So this is what happens in the takeaway. It's this, and it's this. You put those together, and that's the backswing, right? So that's what the backswing is. So you're lifting, rotating at the same time. So your horizontal rotation is from your hips and your shoulders, and your vertical component is from it's a little bit from that, because if I don't lift the club at all, right, and I just turn my hips and my shoulders, it's this. So you can see the club came off the ground a little bit, right? So there's a little bit of lift there, but the rotation or the vertical component is coming mostly from this. That's mostly what the vertical component is. If I don't have if there's no rotation in my backswing, meaning I'm not rotating my hips or my shoulders relative to my hips, my backswing would look like this. That's my backswing, right? It's just lifting of the arms. I add the hip and shoulder rotation, it's this. So it's really, here's my takeaway, and I'm just going to continue. I'm just going to continue to go up to the top. That's how you just continue lifting and rotating to get up to the top of the swing. So Bob, I'm going to skip you because there's some other, you've asked several questions. Get to some people that haven't. Please explain the hats on the table. So Toss Golf, Nike, and a Ping hat. They're just hats that I own. Nothing. And then he says, I noticed that you have an Orange Whip trainer. What type of exercise? I do not have an Orange Whip trainer. This is not an Orange Whip trainer. This is a if that's what you think is an Orange Whip trainer. But this is just like an angle finder thing, so I can show things a little bit. But yeah, I don't have an Orange Whip, and I've never actually used one, so not really sure. Lunch, thanks for all the info. All right, so Bob, I'll go back to your question here. So in terms of priorities, would you work on early extension first, or backswing length, or sequence lag? I think I should pick one. Power turn would be number one thing that I'd be working on. I'd be working on, basically the most important things are in order in the Top Speed Golf system. So stable fluid spine, that's the number one priority you should have in your swing. Next would be the power turn. Next would be getting some lag in the downswing, right? Next would be getting your compression line correct, and next would be the straight line release and the move. All right, so that's the order. So that's how I'd work through things. If you're not interested in really changing your technique much, and you're just looking for some speed, then I just go to the 20-minute distance fix and work through that course, because that's going to be all about getting you some speed. But that also incorporates shoulder turn and sequencing and stuff like that. There's some of that in there. There's some overlap for sure. So Bob M goes, very interesting on compression. So I have a smash factor with driver greater than 1.4, 5 iron, 1.35 to 4. I'm thinking I should keep my speed and early extension fixes going. Great summary. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds like you're getting some good compression on the golf ball if you're in that area. So yeah. So you think the confusion comes from the thought of taking a divot? Yeah. So taking a divot is just about the low point being ahead of the golf ball, which allows you to make ball first contact. A lot of people, their low point's too close to the golf ball, and when they take a divot, it's a chunk typically. So James says, have a good lunch and a nice weekend. Actually, I already ate lunch. I'm getting ready to go play some golf. So Bob says, thanks for all the info today. Have a great 4th, you too, Bob. Thanks. All right, we'll go ahead and stop right there. Michael J says, hey, thanks, Q, for the great session. And no problem. All right, so everybody have a good weekend. I'll be back here on Monday. That's 5 p.m. Eastern time. So everybody have a good 4th. And I will talk to you all next time.